The mere thought of space is enough to cause anyone to have an existential crisis. The vast expanse we know of space is so unexplored and largely unknown to us that it's really a scary thought in itself. To actually go and to be in space is even more unsettling. Only a few will experience what it's like to be in space in their lifetime. What's even more eerie is the thought of being completely disconnected from Earth, and even more so the thought of being abandoned or even dying out in space. What would happen? So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at 3 chilling cases of death in space. The fate of Vladimir Komarov. Born in 1927, Vladimir Komarov studied as a teenager in the esteemed 1st Moscow Special Air Force School. It was here he'd learn the basics and would study to become a pilot. Once qualified, he would then go on to serve as a fully fledged fighter pilot. It was 1959 and Vladimir joined the then brand new Soviet Space Initiative. Impressively, he was inducted into the very first Soviet cosmonaut crew. During his time in the Soviet space program in the 1960s, he would go on to suffer a horrific fate. On April the 23rd of 1967, his spacecraft was just about to be launched. However, discussing the backstory. At the time, the spacecraft, known as the Soyuz 1, was widely considered to be the safest form of transport that could carry humans into space. Despite this, it wasn't actually safe enough to be used. All 3 of the previous tests involving the craft had failed miserably, either exploding or malfunctioning. Disregarding this and under pressure from officials for the launch to coincide with the 50th anniversary of the Great October Socialist Revolution, the launch went ahead too soon. The Soyuz 1, as mentioned previously, was to launch with Vladimir on board and a second spacecraft the day after called the Soyuz 2A. Due to be on board this second shuttle was 3 other cosmonauts. The plan was for both shuttles to come together and the crew for Soyuz 2A to board Soyuz 2 for the journey back. Unfortunately, the second mission was cancelled at the last minute, likely preventing a loss of more life. Back to April the 23rd of 1967, launch day. It's around 3:30 AM and from its platform at the Cosmodrome, the Soyuz 1 was officially launched into space. Very early into the mission, a solar panel on board didn't open, which caused a very dangerous and dramatic decrease in power on board and would affect the vital life support systems. Also, to make matters worse, the navigation completely malfunctioned and didn't work at all. Taking all of this into account, it was decided the mission was to be cancelled, and after 27 hours, Komarov was on his way back. Impressively, he was somehow able to steady the ship and get the retro rockets working. At this point, hopes were incredibly high for his safe return. The landing capsule that Komarov was strapped into was ready to return home and it was launched. But sadly, the parachute on the capsule wouldn't open, and instead, Vladimir was killed when it crashed at a speed of around 130 miles per hour. The Lost Cosmonauts. The story of the Lost Cosmonauts is shrouded in mystery and is more so a conspiracy theory. This is because none of the reports or claims being made have been officially confirmed true. So the story starts during the Cold War era of the 50s and 60s. The Soviet Union and the USA were in competition with each other to see who could progress further and show the most advancements. This became centralized around what is now known as the space race. At this time, a lot of technology was experimental, so it comes as no surprise that there were many injuries and fatalities experienced by the crews and engineers working on these early spacecrafts. The story of the Lost Cosmonauts begins in 1957, when the Soviet Union were the first to launch a satellite into the Earth's orbit. Then, in 1961, when Yuri Gagarin became the first man in space. The theory of the Lost Cosmonauts was based on the fact the Soviet Union was allegedly covering up any failures of their space program. However, this didn't stop many other documented fatalities during the time. A Soviet rocket malfunctioned on launch, engulfing the entire launch pad in flames, which would take the lives of around 70 of the ground crew present. Then another cosmonaut was killed when his training capsule caught fire, and of course our last story of Vladimir is also a fatality caused by the Soviet program. The story continued, however, as it's been alleged that there was actually cosmonauts that had been lost out in space. This is according to Robert Heinlein, who is an author. Robert said that during his time travelling in the then USSR, he'd come in contact with army cadets. They had alleged that there was a very recent manned spacecraft sent into space. This craft had allegedly suffered a malfunction, causing the navigation system to alter the course into the complete opposite direction. This would mean the craft and alleged crew inside would have no chance of returning and were essentially stuck in orbit. Despite the Soviet Union officially declaring it was an unmanned mission, Heinlein didn't buy it. Some reports out of Italy allegedly suggested that some amateur radio operators had accidentally turned into transmissions from this lost spacecraft's crews. The radio operators claimed that the transmissions were coming from a craft moving away from the Earth, and they were this lost craft. These reports were strongly denied by the Soviet Union, and is reinforced by the fact there was no blast shield for re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. This suggests there was no intention of it returning. The recordings are widely brushed off as false nowadays, as declassified Soviet documents mention nothing about this mission, and the reasons mentioned before. The fate of the Soyuz 11. The story of Soyuz 11 and its unfortunate fate. After a total of 23 days in orbit, the Soyuz 11's mission had gone completely according to plan. They were due to make their return, and it was presumed the crew would land back on Earth successfully, and it would be a huge moment for the Soviet Union. This would have created a huge international buzz. This, however, would never happen. As the Soyuz 11 craft was descending down to Earth, it was spotted that part of the craft's parachute was on fire. Rescue teams hurried to the landing site. As they reached the now crash site of the craft, they were greeted by a worst-case scenario ordeal. Once they got the craft open, the dead bodies of all 3 cosmonauts were found. These were Viktor Patsiev, Georgy Dobrovolsky, and Vladislav Volkov. There was huge disappointment, and sadly, despite earlier reports of a psychological-related death, it was reported the cosmonauts on board had died in the most horrible of ways: decompression. This is essentially an immediate plummet in air pressure. This descent would have horrendous effects on the human body, including your lungs to expand to the point that other vital organs would be drastically damaged. The water inside soft tissue would be completely vaporized, causing painful swelling, and then to top it off, this would cause cooling to one's mouth, resulting in heavily obstructed blood flow. So within around 1 minute, blood would stop circulating and the brain would have little to no oxygen, and very soon after, someone would be dead. Whilst the official documents have yet to be released, it's highly likely that at the time of their deaths, the cosmonauts would have been in excruciating pain, with blood pouring out of their mouths and ears, as well as their eardrums rupturing. This is a truly horrific and unimaginable thing to have to go through. The incident of decompression was allegedly caused by a broken valve on the breathing apparatus. It's still uncertain what happened that caused this, or if it was simply just a malfunction or flaw within the craft itself. The Soyuz 11 crew remain etched into history as the only humans to have ever died in space. We can learn a lot from these stories and why it's important to have comprehensive safety checks. From these stories, it's evident that even the smallest of things going wrong in these dangerous environments can cause catastrophic disasters. Fortunately, nowadays, with far more advanced technology and safety procedures, incidents like the ones mentioned practically don't happen, or happen extremely occasionally. We're now able to embark on much more advanced missions once thought to be impossible. So what do you make of these chilling stories of spaceflight and exploration? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comment section below and help us by growing this community whilst working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.